Okay, well, now that we've sort of gone through some of that nitty-gritty, I guess you could call it, it's time now to have a look at this DPACT approach in action, or certain aspects of DPACT in action. And the first sort of case study, I guess, or example I want to show you is from our MTech course at GTech. Now, MTech is short for Manufacturing Technology, and we have a very big emphasis on CAD, the CAD specialization within that Certificate 3 in Manufacturing Technology. And what you're looking at here is our Moodle course page for MTech, and this is something we've really developed this year. We've really boosted the way we go about this, and I've been very lucky to have a little bit of participation in the way this course was put together, because manufacturing technology and CAD is being done very differently this year compared to the way it was done in the past. And DPACT as an approach is somewhat embedded in there. So what you're looking at here is the course page, and you can see a menu there. Basically the blue boxes there represent sort of individual skills that are built, and the red and orange buttons there are more sort of project-based things where those skills all come together for the learners to produce something. The guys that are putting this together, Frank and Robin, have actually added a lot more since I took this screenshot. So let's have a look at it. Basically, when the learners, this is an example unit, they start by downloading an assignment page that looks a bit like this. And it always starts with what we call a preview. And the example here is, think about the title of this lesson, Sketch View in Inventor. Briefly explain what you think will be covered in the tutorial before you watch it. So the learners are actually asked to look at that title for the tutorial and say, what do you think is going to be covered? What's this going to be about? And the example response from a learner here is that I think this video will cover how to start sketches and to get sketches right in Inventor. It will show the basic and easy ways to start sketches. So you can see here what we're doing is actually applying that idea of discovery. We're actually seeing what they do know about SketchView, if they know something about it, and generally speaking they don't, because this is a very new thing for most learners. This is a very early stage of the course, and we get them to guess and predict. We get them to look at the title of the tutorial and start to make some predictions, or get them to think a little bit critically about what it is they might be doing. And that's right at the very start of the lesson, and it's fairly simple, as you can see. And we're not expecting them to be able to predict exactly what it is they need to do, but we do hope that they can start to think about that. We then move on to the actual tutorial, and as you might guess, we're now looking more at the instruction side of things. And in this case, the way we apply the instruction is via a screencast. Now, in the past, with our CAD classes, basically the teacher would showcase a skill, or demonstrate how to do something using the big screen up at the front of the class, and then they would spend the rest of the lesson scurrying around trying to make sure every single learner got it. And it was really exhausting work for them, and they often needed 2 people in the room, and even then it was hard for them. But we've gone ahead with this idea of using screencasts, and the results have been rather amazing. So I'm just going to play this, because it's a quick one. I'm going to play this instructional screencast for this particular skill unit.
Hello again, guys, it's Frank here. In this session we're going to have a look at, just quickly, the sketch view. When you open up a new file and you click on, say, Standard Part, you get the sketch view here. Okay, so what it is, it's drawn out like a grid, because it's like a graph paper. This is where we sketch our first shape. Now up here you've got lines and circles and arcs and rectangles to get us started. So I'll just quickly So we got a sketched rectangle there, and once you're finished with the sketch, click Finish Sketch, of course, which allows us to then move into the modelling phase. But to get back into the sketch, click over here in the browser, double click on the Sketch 1 pad, then we're back into the sketch so we can make modifications or add as we need to. Okay, so very quickly, that's our first port of call when creating a new part. We create a sketch. Once you're finished with the sketch, okay, and your constraints and your modifications, finish the sketch, and then we can create whatever we want to as far as giving it a shape. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so that was the screencast. Now, what I'd like you to think about there is, some of those questions that I said that we need to ask ourselves about instruction. Is it accessible? Well, did it link to the discovery stage? Well, we did ask them to think about what they were going to see and what was going to be covered. So there was a link between that and the tutorial itself. Was it multimodal? Well, it was certainly very visual, and it had that auditory support as well, the teacher talking and explaining as well as demonstrating on the screen what's going on. Did the instruction allow for focus? Now this is the big one. It does allow for, what we've found with screencasts is that when the learners are looking at their individual screen and they put on their headphones and they watch this tutorial, they no longer sort of get distracted by the people around them or what's going on in the classroom. They become very focused on the screen, and it really does allow for that focus on what's being taught here. The other question with instruction was, is it reviewable? And of course it is. It's a recorded lesson. So the learners can actually replay that video as many times as they need to grasp it, as many times as they need to sort of follow each step in that little process that they viewed. Going on to the next stage of their worksheet, after they've watched that tutorial, they're asked to take notes on the tutorial. And they're actually asked to take these notes either following the video or while they're watching it. And what we find is that learners often they'll often go back and they'll watch that video again and they'll take notes, which end up looking a bit like this. So this is an example that a learner's done, and they've actually come up with a list of instructions and important processes or techniques that they saw in that tutorial. And because if we were to do that live and get them to take notes, they may not get it all. But because we've recorded it, they can pause it, they can take a note after each main section, they can rewind the video and watch the part again to get the notes right. So in a lot of ways this instruction part is we are confirming again, and we're going even further with the multimodal thing, because we're now creating a written record of the instructions. The learners themselves are generating that. We can confirm that because this is an assignment that they'll then upload in Moodle, and the teachers can check and see whether they actually did get those instructions, and they can give them feedback on that. And I did say one of the other questions we need to ask about instruction is, can we encourage them to commit these instructions to memory? And by actually watching and writing notes about what they watch, that's a great way to help them remember it, as well as refer back to it if they need to. There's a nice summary here of the process that they need to go through for this particular skill. So this definitely does support the practice that's going to follow. But the next stage of the assignment is actually Task D, critical thinking. And we actually ask them here to say, well, you've watched this tutorial, you've taken notes on it. How and why is the information in the tutorial important or useful? So we've embedded a critical thinking element at this stage of the lesson. And the learner here has responded with, the information in the tutorial is important because not only does it cover the basics, but it shows you how to get back into the sketching window to make modifications if you need to, after you have clicked Finish Sketch. This means you can always modify your work if needed to. It's interesting because different learners notice different things here. There's no really right or wrong answer. Every learner is unique. They all pick out something different from it. And this is what's really wonderful about this approach, because just by encouraging all the learners to think about why this could be useful, they come up with a small range of things that are personal to them about why they think this could be useful. And we get a really unique window into what they're thinking and why they're thinking that. And again, that's really good for informing us on how relevant and useful this instruction is in their eyes. So, yeah, definitely, as I've said before, critical thinking can be embedded anywhere in our instructional approach. And by putting it here before we go on and do some practice, we're actually saying, these instructions are relevant. Why don't you think about how they could be relevant? So then the learners actually go on and do something. Well, in this application, it's called application, but realistically, it's really practice. It's sort of on that cusp between controlled practice and open practice leading into application. And those questions that we asked about practice here, are we answering well? Does the instruction support this practice? Well, of course it does. The video instructions support what the learners are asked to do is actually replicate what they just saw there. They've actually got to go into the CAD program, Inventor, and actually make the same thing that the teacher did. And the instructions are right there for them to watch as many times as they need to replicate that. They've also got their own written summary of the process that they can refer back to. Is it perceivably relevant? Well, it will be when they go ahead and start doing their projects, but we've made the instructions feel relevant at least, and the practice. I showed you on the first screen how there's a series of skills tutorials and then projects. Well, when they get to the project, they'll see how perceivably relevant these skills were, and each skill tutorial sort of builds a bit on the one before it. So we hope that the relevance of each skill is being perceived. Is it closed or open practice? Well, in this case, it's fairly closed because we're asking them to do a specific thing, and then we're giving them feedback on that. But it's open in the sense that they can sort of do it in the way that suits them. As long as they come up with the result at the end, they can experiment with the program and come up with, as long as they come up with the same sort of result, in a sense, that's sort of open practice. Is it sufficient practice? That was the other question for practice. Well, I guess so. Is it sufficient? Well, the good thing is that each of these skills it works in a terraced or cumulative system, so they'll reapply this skill in the future tutorials that they do. So I think it will be sufficient at this stage to just work on that skill, and then they'll have a chance to add it to other skills later. Is it confirmed? Do we confirm? Well, we do. This is an assignment that they upload. It's also confirming to the learners when they put in their screenshot of their work here. It's confirmation to them too that they can actually do it. And yeah, it does. It supports later application, as in when they go ahead later and start doing projects, this practice is going to actually support their ability to create stuff in a stuff that's actually real and is useful. So that's a quick sort of drive through of an MTech lesson that has many of those DIPA elements. And pay attention in particular to the critical thinking and the discovery parts, because as I said, the instruction, the practice stuff, that's fairly common to most lessons, but by putting in those discovery and critical thinking sections, what sort of impact does that have on the experience for the learners? And also, think about the instruction. How did we provide this instruction? And it answered pretty much all those questions that I said are important to me in terms of effective instruction. And screencasting is just an amazing tool for making the instruction accessible. So that's the MTech example. In the next example, I'll move on to an example for literacy. So I hope you join me for that section of the workshop as well.